Hello everyone, this is me. I have written one mains earlier. This was my second mains, that is 2024 UPSC mains. I am here to give some improvement points because many of us repeat mistakes after mistakes, which hinders us in getting finally selected. Today we will see what were the questions in the exam hall and how to attempt those in time limit because time is an important factor. Moreover, we will talk about the do's and don'ts so that we can do well in mains and not repeat our mistakes. What should be the strategy to clear prelims as well as mains? Because we know that without prelims, your mains preparation is of no use, and we should not become PT master because mains is what will give you rank and your preferred service. The conclusion is that there should be a balanced way. Now, before all of these, let's talk about the questions and what I wrote in the exam hall. Exam hall. This was essay paper. Now let's look at the questions. All of us know that there are two sections, section A, section B. Each section has 4 questions. We have to attempt only one question from each section. That is, in total, we have to attempt two essays, each of 125 marks, totaling 250. Now let us look at the questions. The question number 1 is forests precede civilizations and deserts follow them. This was one of the essay which many people would not have attempted because this is a tough essay. It is not easy to write on this. An essay on forest was also in 2022. I think when the examiner was going to make paper, he went one step ahead and repeated that essay. But this is a little bit different essay. If a candidate will write a good essay on this topic, he will certainly get a good marks because many people will not write on this. Now this second essay is the empires of the future will be the empires of mind. This was also one of abstract essay which required deep thinking, and more importantly you have to think and brainstorm in the exam hall. This can take your time. If you have prepared already on this topic, then you can certainly attempt this. What I attempted was there is no path to happiness, happiness is the path, because I had written on this topic earlier. And also this was one of the easy essay if you ask me. Now coming to question number 4. The doubter is a true man of science. This was also one of the essay which could have been written. Now coming to question number 3 which I wrote. Let us see. Now let us look at the essay number 3. There is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. Now we all know that we should not follow pastel approach in philosophical essays because that was an old method. Now this method do not give us very good marks. We should follow, if we देखिए हमें हर ऐसे में पेस्टल नहीं यूज़ करना है क्योंकि ये पुराना मेथड हो गया है। लेकिन अगर आपको यूज़ करना है पेस्टल तो आपको पहले मेजर कंपोनेंट होते हैं एक ऐसे में 4 से 5 मेजर कंपोनेंट लिखना पड़ता है। मतलब आपको ऐसे को 4 से 5 हेडिंग में डिवाइड करना है। देन वी कैन यूज़ पेस्टल मेथड इन to explain a major component, meaning if you want to explain a major component we can use pastel, but you cannot use pastel to write your whole essay. You can use pastel if you want to explain one major component. For example, in this essay I wrote five major components. Even if we want to use pastel, but then you should choose those dimensions which many people will not write. For example, you can go into IR dimension, ethical dimension, cultural dimension, geographical, administrative, security dimension is also very important. देखिए ये मैंने वहाँ एग्ज़ाम हॉल में ये बनाया था। इसको ब्रेन स्टॉर्मिंग कहते हैं, माइंड मैप भी कह सकते हैं, ब्रेन स्टॉर्मिंग. I have scored 111 in my previous essay means, because this was my second means. The year in which I scored this, it was a comparatively good score, 111. Now let me think what I wrote in introduction. I think I used an anecdote on Heraclitus and Aristotle. Heraclitus and Aristotle. There was a debate between these two. I wrote and tried to explain how there is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. Then I explained what is happiness. I tried to explain with few examples. For example, I used children's, how they are very innocent. Their innocence is reflected in everything which they do. They do not consider happiness. They do not consider happiness as their end goal, because they are always happy and always laughing. Now I wrote thesis statement in this. Let me think what I wrote. First of all, yeah, I will explain that there is no path to happiness. Why happiness is the path? Hmm. Why happiness is the path? What what can be the what how this is relevant in contemporary times? This is also very important. You should always write about contemporary relevance of an essay topic. Then you will also give about antithesis, contemporary antithesis, meaning you will talk that happiness is not the path. There can be a path to happiness as well. Then you will explain with few examples. After that we will write way forward. After that we will write way forward. Then we will conclude. Then we will conclude. I think I concluded with a poem Desiderata by Max Ehrman. Now coming to some things which I tried to write in the exam hall. For example, when I tried to this was one of my major component, no path to happiness. There is no path to happiness. In this I wrote about I think I wrote about Plato's cardinal virtues. For example, insights, bravery, wisdom. These are the things which I wrote. I also wrote about Aristotle's eudaimonia. Then I also wrote in this Friedrich Nietzsche. I explained him how he tried to explain that thing. Then I went on to write my second major component, that is happiness is the path. In this I wrote about contentment, how contentment is the biggest treasure which every human should have. I also wrote about Robert Frost, Lao Tzu's philosophy, Ferdinand Magellan, how he was a daring man and followed his dream. I also wrote about Kabir Das. Then I also somewhere mentioned about Franz Kafka. his philosophy, and carpe diem philosophy, Latin philosophy. Meaning carpe diem meaning seize the day, live in present. I explained this. Then I wrote about contemporary relevance of this topic. After that, I wrote antithesis. In way forward, I mentioned Sudha Murthy. There was one book written by her. I am currently forgetting the name of the book. And I also mentioned James Allen. James Allen's Mind is the Master Power that molds and makes. This was the poem I wrote. I also mentioned about suicides because in India suicides are increasing day by day due to various reasons. For example, depression, anxiety. Then I wrote in way forward. I also mentioned about T.S. Eliot, Leo Tolstoy. How Leo Tolstoy says that one should throw for oneself like an adhesive web of love and catch in all that it comes. Something like these I mentioned in my essay. Then I wanted to give before the ultimate concluding line. I mentioned Frederick Nietzsche, something like this. Then I concluded my essay with this poem, and I remember that I wrote all the pages. I filled all the pages in this essay. If there was more, I could have written more, but the pages were filled, and this was the reason I could not write my second essay well. In my second essay, I think I left, let me think, I think I left two pages. But pages are not what matters. What matters is you should not cross word limit, that is 1200 words in an essay. No one knows if one crosses the word limit there is a penalty or not, but we should always try not to cross this 1200. Now let us look at the section B. Section B also have 4 essays. We have to write only one. We have to write only one. Many people wrote this social media one. Social media one, fear of missing out. This was a normal essay, but it was a very general essay. I mean to say that this was like a static essay, not having a philosophical part. But we can mention philosophy also. But I did not wrote this. I did not write this essay. I wrote this one. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but to test the character, give him power. लगभग सभी मनुष्य प्रतिकूल परिस्थितियों का सामना कर सकते हैं, लेकिन किसी व्यक्ति के चरित्र के परीक्षण के लिए उसे शक्ति प्रदान करके देखिए. Seventh essay was all ideas having large consequences are always simple. The cost of being wrong is less than the cost of doing nothing. I wrote this one. Nearly all men can stand adversity. For example, I think I wrote an anecdote on Jews and Israelis. Let me think what I wrote. But before this, in my first essay, I mentioned 5 headings. That is, I wrote 5 major components, excluding introduction and conclusion. In this essay, as I was running low on time, I think I had only 50 minutes to 1 hour. For that, I thought that I should not write headings, and I wrote without any heading. This essay was without any heading. In my earlier mains, I did not write any heading in all my 2 essays, without any heading. This tells us that these things do not matter. You can write headings, you can write without headings. but your essay should be concise, in flow, exact expression. Headings does not matter. Headings does not matter too much. We should not take too much pain on this issue. Now, coming to my essay, what I wrote in my exam, I mentioned how Israelis were driven out of Egypt. Then they were persecuted. We all know that they were persecuted throughout history. But one of the fact about them is that they withstood adversity. They tackled it bravely, but and became one of the powerful nation in the Middle East. We all know they are very scientifically advanced, technologically advanced, militarily advanced nation. But to test their character, give him power, as the essay, as the our essay says. Now, in this part, I mentioned how too much power to test their character. Power is the one thing that tests a man's character, a group's character. Then I mentioned how the current war, ongoing war, have taken too much innocent lives, be it of Palestinians or of Israelis. Okay, then I moved on to uh, let me think about. Then I mentioned I think I wrote this essay without any headings. I mentioned about some examples. I use I I wrote about some positive examples and also about negative examples. This was in antithesis. No, no, no. Sorry, this was not in antithesis. This was also part of my explanation. In positive examples, I wrote about Arjun and Sri Krishna, about how Sri Krishna taught Arjun to fight the war, which was a just and ethical war. I also mentioned about Sri Ram and his Vanvas, how he withstood adversity, and after getting power, he did not misuse it. We all know this about our Indian history. I also mentioned about Abraham Lincoln, how he united Americans and became powerful, but did not live an ethical way. He was a moral leader. Every one of us know this. I also mentioned about Nelson Mandela, how he how he was tortured when he was fighting against apartheid. But when South Africa became independent and apartheid was done away with in South Africa, Nelson Mandela chose not to take revenge, but not to take revenge, but he used his power in an ethical way. And in negative examples, I wrote about very common example which every one of us would have written. Hitler. Hitler used power in a crude way which led to Holocaust and killing of more than 6 million Jews. I also mentioned about how Americans misused it by quoting an example of Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing, Vietnam War, and I also mentioned about Israelis how current war in Palestine is taking innocent lives. Also, you can also mention about Russia-Ukraine war. Then these were the examples which I wrote. Many examples I have talked about. These I wrote in my exam, because this is the brainstorming which I did in the exam hall. I also mentioned about guided missiles and misguided men. This is a very famous phrase. You can also mention in this essay Invictus poem by Ernest Ernst Henley. This is a very famous poem which could have been used in this essay. Jonathan Eeg. I mentioned about the a book written by Jonathan about Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King Jr. How he was a great man, but sometimes great men are also human and they commit mistakes. This was the book which he wrote about him. I mentioned somewhere in my essay. Then I also mentioned the recent pager attacks in Lebanon, which happened. I think not. It happened within few days back before the essay paper, which was on I think 20 September. I mentioned about this pager attack, how power, how men can stand adversity. For example, Israelis withstood adversity, but when a man acquires power, then a man of character can use that power in an ethical and moral way. Sometimes it is used in a crude way, which can take innocent lives without even realizing it. Then I think I wrote about Albert Camus, Arthur Schopenhauer, Frederick Nietzsche, power of example. I think this quote was given by, or I'm currently forgetting the uh, name of the American president which gave this quote. I think he said that. Mm, I think he said that the people remember. He said about America. The people remember Americans. The people remember Americans with the not by the example of their power, but by the power of their examples. This I wrote somewhere before conclusion. And then I also used Dennis Leary's quote. In Dennis Leary's quote, he said that crisis does not test character. Crisis, no, this was about something related to crisis and character. Crisis and character. We can replace crisis with adversity. Adversity and character. How these are related with power. You can use. I was talking about Dennis Leary. He explained adversity, character. These things you can, for example, if you have learned a quote about about some famous personalities, then it is not necessary that you mention them as it is. You also use the very quote in your own language by paraphrasing it without even mentioning the name of the author. This is also one of the unique way which many people use while writing essay. Then I think I concluded in my final concluding line. I mentioned this Sanskrit word. This Sanskrit word I mentioned. This Sanskrit phrase, age old adage. I mentioned. I wrote that. I wrote Sheelam Param Bhushanam. Character is the, I think the English version of this is, character is the most important. Character is the most important jewelry. This was how I wrote my second essay. Second essay I wrote very haphazardly. This should not be done because in my earlier mains also I wrote my first essay good, but second essay was written. Second one was not written much very much good. It was, I think it was an average essay. I got 111. This year I am expecting maybe I can get 120. 120 I am expecting. But the learning point, now I have explained my two essays which I wrote in exam hall. Now let us talk about concluding points. What conclusion, what we should do and what we should not do to score well in essay. First and foremost, which I want to mention is that we should give equal equal time to both essays, which I was not able to allot. This is most important time. This is most important thing which comes with practice. We should practice essay writing before the exam day. Second point second point is that we should be ready with some anecdotes, quotes, poems, and one of the most important point is that analysis and examples both are equally important. Both are equally important. You cannot only give examples without analyzing anything. You cannot quote just start quoting examples like means many people do quote examples and only validate the given statement. This is the thing we should not do. We should analyze in our own words how we think, because this is what gives an examiner about how what is the personality of the individual which who is writing the essay. You can validate your points, means you can validate your analysis by examples, which I have done as mentioned above. Now let us conclude the essay. For more analysis, you can join the Telegram link given in the description. I will also Telegram link given in the description. I will also analyze GS 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. What I wrote in exam hall. What could have been done better? If what could have been done better? Okay, thank you. We will meet again.